Welcome, everyone. Are you good back there? Good. Welcome to 2025 PDD. The room that you're in is for ways of working, and we're about to kick off a really exciting session. I will be introducing our speakers here in just a minute, but just a few preliminary things. If you have your phone on you, just make sure it's on silent. This is supposed to be relaxed, interactive, engaging. If you've got questions or comments, it looks like our speakers are good with that, so let's hear them. Additionally, our QR code that you filled out in that first meeting for the PDUs is not functioning, so I am going to be handing around a pretty piece of blank paper for you guys all to write your names on to make sure that we can get your PDUs for you. Other than that, we'll go ahead and get started. We have it, so don't worry. I don't know mine either, so. But great question. Thank you for that. So today I'm going to introduce Barb Wilson and Ann Browning. So Barb is a senior project manager for Albemarle, and Ann Browning is a change manager. And so today the topic that they're going to be discussing is navigating the project manager-change manager relationship. So I will be handing it off to them, so give them a warm welcome.
So we're not gonna, you guys will get this presentation. You can read all about our exploits and stuff in your own time. Thank you everybody for coming today and for choosing to explore this topic with us. We picked it because it is something that over the last few months we've lived through starting to navigate this. I had never had a dedicated change manager assigned to a project until Ann joined me earlier this year, and it was a little bit of a shock to the system. As a project manager, when we get into this, you'll start to see a lot of the topics that she's talking about, like stakeholder management, we as project managers do. It's just done differently, and they bring a whole different perspective and a whole different set of skills, depth of skills to it. So that's why we picked to do this. So just recap a couple of things that we're going to be diving into today. We're limited time, so we can't get into as much as we would like, and as passionate as we are about this, we have to limit what we're going to dive into. So we picked really the main areas. So just understanding the roles and how they're different and how they're very alike and where they may mesh and overlap. Some key areas of collaboration. Again, can't get into everything, so we picked what we thought were really the most important things for collaboration. And then we're going to talk about some of these best practices throughout the whole thing as we're going through. We do welcome questions on some of these slides. It's more helpful if you wait till we get to the end of the slide, because we're going to touch on several topics that may answer some questions. So at the end of the slides, if you've got a question, we do want this to be interactive, so by all means, raise your hand. We are time bound, so as a good project manager, I got some target times here, so I'm going to try and keep us moving. But we do want to hear from you if you do have questions. All right, so a couple of things. I want to ask a couple of questions here. So first off, how many of you are familiar with change management? Do you feel like you know what change management is? Just a quick show of hands. Okay, so then the second thing is, anybody here ever worked with a change manager? Okay, a couple. And then as a project manager, have you done change management activities? Okay, every hand in the room should be going up, right? Because projects are all about change. Yep. All right, so let's dive into it.
So I'm Ann, thank you. I'm really looking forward to being with you guys this morning. Thought I'd start with just a few basics. We're not going to get into what change management is, but I really love this definition of organizational change management. Thought I'd start there. So it kind of surprises a lot of people. It is a structured, very structured and systematic approach and with a set of very distinct tools for driving successful change outcomes. And it really is about the people. It's about people working differently, people thinking differently, people together working and thinking differently. And we have to support employees, not just at the end, but we have to support them from the beginning through the transition, which is a really important area, and then through to go live and beyond. So that current state to future state, and understanding what is needed for each kind of audience, the stakeholder audience, for them to embrace and adopt the change. And you know as well as I do, we're all different, right? And we all have different levels of thresholds and pressures on ourselves. So it really is important to understand each one of your audiences. So roles within a project, yeah. Was there a slide, a couple slides before that? No? Oh, okay. I thought there was something before that. Okay. So just wanted to highlight the key roles within any change, and I'm sure you're familiar with these, but on the left you'll see senior leaders, our sponsors, and our people managers. And the senior leaders, your executives, they own the outcomes. They're responsible for and accountable for the success of the initiative. They secure and own the funding, they establish all the expectations. They have very distinct roles. They need to be active and visible around the project. They need to establish a coalition of their peers so that their peers are out there promoting and talking to teams about the change. And then they must communicate and not hand it off to someone else, but actually communicate with the people that are affected directly. And all three of those can be challenging for executives. I'm sure you probably have some experience there. And then your people leaders. Our people leaders are the ones who actually will make sure that at the ground level, people understand and are adopting the change. They have 5 different roles, from liaison to communicator to a resistance manager. They're really important. I mean, think about it yourself. When there's a change that affects your job, who do you really want to hear from? You want to hear from your manager, your people leader, right? Ooh, sorry. What does this mean to me, to my job? What are you expecting out of me? So those are 2 very important roles. And on the right are kind of more orchestrating the change. So we have all of you, our PMs, which we lean heavily on for all of your expertise and your methodology and like Barb said, the structure, getting things done. And then you have your change, you don't know often, I don't know, it sounds like not everyone here has change management within the organization. But your change manager is learning and applying the change and helping people understand and adopt it. And it's everything. We have a whole set of tools. I have to engage senior leaders and create plans for them, the people leaders, the individuals themselves, spending time understanding what it is they need and taking all this and integrating it into a change plan. And then you have employees. Right? They are the ones that are embracing and executing the change. The thing is, we have to remember that people leaders, they're employees first. They have to understand the change first. They have to embrace it first. And a lot of times, the first time they're hearing about it is when their employees are hearing about it. And that's not helpful to them. So we want to make sure that our people leaders, that we get them to understand the change first. Oh, this was the slide I thought was missing. Okay, so successful change requires both the technical side, which is, it doesn't relate to technology, it really is the design, develop, deliver, so it's project management, and then the people side at the bottom. But in the middle, you'll see the reason for change, and that's why I was talking about that current state, that transition state, and that future state. And the transition state, a lot of times, we don't focus enough time there. We don't have the time sometimes, especially if you're doing change management off the side of your desk, right? You have a schedule, right? But that transition's really important, that we're moving people from the current state through the transition, through the future state. Because what you're going to have is what we call the Swiss cheese approach, where you're going to have holes. You're going to have holes in that transition state, where you're going to have some groups of people moving forward and some stuck. And I always like to ask the question, what percentage of your outcomes are dependent on people changing? Most of the time, it's like it's like 100%. So if we're not getting people to move together, we're not going to have the outcomes that we're looking for. So that technical plus the people side is where we will see the success, the outcomes that we're looking for. So I know you're all going to geek out over this slide, right? Oh, Barb starts with the top.
Yeah. So we, as project managers, one of the first things we do with every project is look at how are we going to run this thing to make it successful. And we're going to tailor our approach and our methodologies and our tools and our skill sets to that. So what we wanted to do is to try and communicate how this can fit in using something that everybody's probably familiar with, and maybe it's a little bit simplified. So we chose to look at a more traditional waterfall approach. So I just want to say this is one way that this will work. What you have to do is when you have your change manager and you're looking at how you're going to deploy and do all of this work, how do you fit what they do into it? So as we're going through this now, Anne's going to be talking about some of these things down here at the bottom. And you may, if you're reading these boxes, as I said earlier, as project managers, we've all done change management. You're going to recognize some of these boxes, and this will start to, I think, show you how when you have a change manager and they're taking accountability for some of these things that you as a project manager have always done, that means that your job is changing. So as we are going through this for the rest of the time we have, be thinking about if you're in that position, and you've got a change manager, and these are the things you've done in the past, how would you be altering what you do, and how would you develop that relationship with your change manager to be able to continue effectively? So with that.
Yeah, so how many have their ProSci certification? Okay, so I asked that because you'll recognize some of these terms up here. But if you look right at the top where it says prepare, approach, manage, change, and sustain outcomes, those are kind of the three chunks of what ProSci says are the change methodology. And under that, you can see ADKAR, so ADKAR, awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, reinforcement. That's what that stands for. I guess the point I want to make just at the top here is, where are we bringing in change management? Even as, if you're doing change management yourself, where in the process, the project management process, should we be bringing in change management? And it's right up there in ideation. It is so early, and I can tell you from doing this for as long as I have already, I probably brought in most of the time under plan. And I have, teams calling me and say, hey, we need change management in here. Oh, yeah, let's go. Okay, we're ready to train. We're ready to launch training. And I'm like, no, you're not, right? So, and it really puts the project behind, not just the change manager, but the project behind when we bring change management in so late. And then there's usually never time to really do change management well, right? So, and you can see where I'm starting to build awareness and desire there early, and then all the managing of the change getting to knowledge and ability, right? And I just want to stress real quickly, ability. I think ADKAR should be ADKAAAAAR. Because we don't give people enough time to practice what it is that they're supposed to be doing differently, right? And then think about all the other changes that are coming at them from other areas, right? So we really have to focus on giving people enough time to practice what it is that they're learning and fail at it, right? Fail and learn and execute. So here is our methodology. This is kind of how we've done it within the organization that I'm with right now, but similar in other organizations as well. And I'm not going to go through this in detail, but you can see that there's some in green and some in yellow. And the way I decide what actual tools to use is through that change risk assessment. So we'll work with the project team and go through a set of questions to determine is it low, medium, or high risk. It's how it's scored. And just a note that if it affects your brand, your reputation, or customers, it's always high, no matter what it scores. So then, depending on that, I'll know which one of these tools to use, right? So you can see, starting with my stakeholder list, doing a change impact analysis, current state, future state, what's going to prevent people from changing, what obstacles are in their way, what resistance might we see, We have then a change strategy and a change on a page, which is a great tool for executives. I can just kind of present it and they can see it holistically. Adoption metrics, okay? I am a fanatic about developing people-focused adoption metrics early. And I get a lot of resistance from the project team on this. They're like, we already have metrics. I'm like, well, we need to, how are we going to measure that people are actually using it well, not falling back into old habits? So my metrics are all focused on the people side of change. And then you can see we have, the work plans and change agents. A lot of times if we have some people who are really excited about the change, we can harness their energy, training, reinforcement, and then, lessons learned. So I don't know if that surprises anybody, but we really do have a structure.
I'm gonna layer on and say getting them in early is really key. And the project that we started collaborating on, unfortunately, because of bandwidth, we didn't get Ann assigned to the project until we were pretty far along.
It was a year. I just want you to know.
Yeah.
It was a year.
So getting them involved very early, because then she and I ended up spending a lot of one-on-one time to, number one, bring her forward. And there were gaps that I just could not fill in because part of, that's a big part is that direct stakeholder engagement. So I'm going to echo that bringing them in early, advocate for if you as a project manager look at it and you see that there's a significant people impact to this change, advocate early to get the change manager assigned at the get-go. And then on this last thing, and I'll say it at least 3 more times before we're done, on the adoption metrics, I'm with her now on this, and I'll tell you a very Machiavellian reason. As a project manager, I want as much engagement and skin in the game as possible from my leaders and the people who are working on my project to make it happen. When you force them up front to define how you're going to measure the long-term success, not just the delivery success, but the long-term success of a project, you get a deeper engagement and deeper thinking by them into how to make the end product better. So you get better engagement from your leaders, you've got more skin in the game, and in the end, your job is made easier by having them more invested, because that beginning with the end in mind thing, this is beyond just success factors, this is really how you're going to use it and what you expect out of it at the end of the day, and it forces that thought really early.
I did a good job on this one. Okay. This is just a little example I thought we'd throw in here. So at the company we're working for today, we wanted to it's not that we didn't have a culture of quality, but we wanted to deepen the culture of quality within the organization. And we look at it that every single person within the organization, not just people who are on the manufacturing or ops floor, that every single person has a hand in quality, because whatever you're handing off to someone next needs to be the best quality, and so on and so forth. So I worked with the quality team, the global quality team, and said we need a set of principles. We had principles for safety, but we wanted to develop some principles for quality. So we went through and we spent a lot of time coming up with these, you can read them here. And in different categories too: customer focus, leadership, workmanship, behavior, attitude. As you glance through them, you can see that the common denominator, all of these are people change. All of these are cultural or mindset. They're transformational. So I was just going to take one for an example, the one that's in box there. It says, what is changing? So that principle is, I communicate quality improvement opportunities that focus on the individual, that focus on the issue and not the individual. So how will that change impact people? Well, it might require a shift in how we speak to other people that results in an environment where people are open to receive and to give quality improvement suggestions. So what could be our potential obstacles or resistance? Well, I might have fear of being blamed or blaming others for quality issues, right? I got to point them out. So I don't know, that kind of makes me uncomfortable. Do I really feel comfortable doing that? I work with these people. They're my friends. They're my colleagues. Am I going to upset them and my relationship if I'm pointing out, oh, I see a quality issue here that, is a result of your work? And also my functional area, right? If I'm coming forward and saying, my team, we're doing something that we really need to improve. So there's some definite hurdles to overcome there. The desired future state is for people to be able to confidently give and receive these quality improvements, knowing I'm supported. So on the right, what do we need to overcome? Well, maybe I haven't been supported in the past in doing this, right? So I have some baggage. Maybe I don't have the soft skills to communicate like this, and we need to implement some soft skills training. Or my team will look bad, or are they going to get penalized in any reason? So when we look at the mindsets or attitudes needed to overcome just for this one quality principle, mind you, not all the other ones, we have to overcome a fear, maybe a lack of trust, maybe a lack of trust in my manager. Maybe my manager doesn't really want us to go public with some of these things. Maybe there's been a kind of a theme of intolerance of mistakes. Or ego. Let's face it, no one wants to be called out, right? I don't want to call out my own. I have to be willing, though, in this, to call out my own quality issues. Say, oh, I see something, right? I did this. So you can see that's just one area of people change. And it's if we don't, like Barb said, if we don't start early in the process, it's hard to identify these. It's hard to build trust with people so that they open up and tell you what some of their concerns are. And then it's hard to actually build and manage the change over time when we don't have the time to do it.
So as you can see, as a project manager, I've never done anything to this level of detail to understand my stakeholders and what those barriers are. So imagine now that you have this, how you can incorporate activities, how you can identify risks and put in mitigation and management plans to address those things. So you can think about how much more robust your project plans and your project execution is going to be because you've got this deeper understanding of a dimension of project execution that a lot of time as project managers we've not focused on. I come from an IT background, right? So it was always get to production. As a project manager, that's where you focus. You got it to production, you did your hypercare, and it's over the wall to the business who they have to then go and finish implementing it. And what the change manager does is very much earlier on in the project, that over the wall piece, that wall starts getting lower and lower because you're integrating them into the project itself by taking this and incorporating it into your project plans. All right, so I want to pause here because we've thrown a lot of stuff out there. This wasn't intended to be a deep dive into change management training, but just for those of you who haven't had a change manager, just to give you a flavor of what they bring to the table. So we're about to dive down into those key areas, and we're doing well on time. So if there's any questions, just want to open it up.
Yes.
I did have a question. As you integrated your project management plan, and I'm sorry. Hello? Okay.
Yeah.
As you integrated your project management plan and your change management plan, did you, I'm just wondering, like, how exactly did you do that? Did you have like a change management section that was a fifth of your project management plan, or did you sprinkle change management activities throughout your plan, or how did that work?
So you've got some specific tools.
Yeah, normally if we're brought in early enough, I will ask, where's the project plan?
Yeah.
And then we'll determine where we have to do what, integrating those within the project plan, right? And that's a really good point because I think there's just a common attitude, and it's nobody's fault, but it's a common attitude that like change management's over here, like it'd be nice to have, right? Well, when it's integrated into the project plan, it looks like it's a part of the project, right?
So one stakeholder, right, you've got one stakeholder list that you want to be your source of truth, but then we're going to have aspects of those stakeholders that we're going to manage in different ways. So there are specific tools that she brings to the table for my project that I definitely want to leverage her tools. We're not going to be reinventing the wheel, but there's still things that I have to do as a project manager. So all of the training that we're going to do has to be in my schedule and in my plan. But the working with her to develop those materials and using those best practices and some of those templates and things, she's going to bring that skill set with her and that tool set with her.
Yeah, and the more Barb knows the tools that we use, you know, we try to, like, I lead a lot of stakeholder engagement sessions, but just in her job, in your job, you talk with stakeholders too. So her ears are on, listening as she's talking, and I'm not there, she's listening. She's like, oh, I just heard something. I'm going to get this back to Ann, and let's see if there's something that we need to dig, you know, deeper into.
Yeah, and we've been joined at the hip. Okay, so we weren't.
I know.
We've been joined at the hip now on this project because when I do sit in those meetings, I can listen and be attuned to it, but that is her core competency.
I always hear something different.
Yes, she does, and she brings it. So, and outside of the meetings, she and I will get on teams, and we'll be going back and forth, and we small C challenge in a good and respectful way each other about what we heard and what that means. And having that kind of rapport, building that relationship and building that rapport with your change manager is the key to success. I can't say that enough. At the very beginning, when she first came on, I really didn't understand how that relationship worked. And we figured it out and we've made it, you know, been able to make a very successful go of this. So, so that's, you know, really encourage you to build that relationship because it really is a partnership and a relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How have you found engagement, you know, vertically up and down the organization with change management and with this concept? Have you, because it sounds like you're managing not only stakeholders, but the executives, et cetera, to remove things that are in your way or make them better so the team can move faster. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Tell them about the sponsor management plan.
Oh, you mean like, how do I do it? How? Oh, it can be a challenge. Okay, I'm just because it's up here doesn't mean it goes through. It's funny, when I first came to our organization, it's Albemarle. When I first came to our organization, I used the word sponsor. And I was told, don't use that word. We don't have sponsors here. I'm like, oh, Lord. Right. So it's been, we had to do a lot of, we also have a training arm. We have one person who's done a lot of training within the organization. And we've done a lot of sponsor training, a lot of people leader training, a lot of resistance training. And it's not training that, you know, it's kind of overview-ish, right? It might be a day, but you still don't know everything. But it's funny, it probably took 2 or 3 sessions, and we had our CEO at the sponsor training. And his eyes, for some reason, just got opened, and he called my boss and made her come into his office, and he goes, I'm a terrible sponsor. I had no idea, right? Now, I'm not saying everything changed after that, but he recognized it, and if he recognizes it, now he's asking it of his leaders. Yeah. So it's slow, yes.
So I worked on a project with a change manager from another company. We were both subcontractors and developed that good relationship and that partnership, which I can tell you guys have really well. Where I struggled was we had a client on the other end of things who very much understood the project management aspect of things and had no clue about the change management things and really never found a way to buy into it. So I'm wondering what I can do as a project manager to help support that. I tried to play translator as much as I could because we did have that good relationship and I picked up those principles and ideas and things from her. But what could I do to better support when you have a resistant client on the other side that really doesn't want to buy in, even though that's what they brought the change manager in for?
Are you talking about an external client, or are you talking about an internal client?
Yeah,
okay.
And it's government stuff, right?
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Don't expect the world, let me tell you that. So my one, I guess, suggestion is get a quick win. You're not going to change the organization's mindset. Okay, not overnight at least. So I remember I was working on this project. Yes, it was this project. Now this was internal, but I've done this externally too. I was working on this project and I said, we need to have a people manager meeting first to explain to them what the changes that we are expecting of their people. They're like, we don't have time for that. We don't need that. They already know. No, I'm sorry. We're going to have a people manager meeting. I had so much resistance from Abhijit. It was terrible. And finally, he's like, okay, Ann, and so we had the meeting. There were so many people manager questions that we had to have 2 more sessions after that. And he looked at me and he said, okay, Ann, I'm listening.
Yeah.
So that's all I can say is try to get a quick win to kind of break down the walls. And I'll also say, any change management's better than no change management. If you can't go through the whole thing, so be it. If you do bits and pieces, that's okay. It's never perfect, ever. So.
Yeah, so what she said about showing them how much they don't know, finding a way to do that so that they do recognize, okay, they're bringing something to the table here, and this is dimensions I haven't thought of, so I need to keep an open mind is number one. And then going back to that, adoption metrics. When she started asking those tough questions about the adoption metrics very early on, and we got that resistance, and then the question was going to be, well, how are you going to know if you're successful? You really have to think about it. Those kinds of things will get them embedded. Okay, so let's keep going. So we'll stay on track. We're going to now dive into kind of what is the meat of what I think most of you came here to hear today is how the project manager and the change manager, that relationship and how you mesh those two and how you do that partnership. I've said this a couple times. They bring an additional dimension to it that as a project manager I was oblivious to for the longest time. My level of understanding was here. The depth that she brought it, that much deeper understanding of it when it was there. So we can't cover everything, so we're just going to focus on some of those really key things that we have experienced. All right, so really to kind of kick this off, the biggest area of collaboration that again, my personal opinion, biggest area of collaboration was that stakeholder engagement. Because as the project manager in the past, I've always been the point for stakeholder engagement, understanding stakeholder needs, understanding how the stakeholders, fit into this. You're bringing in now a person whose core competency is understanding stakeholders and really, again, that extra dimension, that extra depth. So that's really going to change. For me, that was the biggest change, was the change in how I approached stakeholder management and stakeholder engagement. The way to think about this is project managers, we are focused on delivery. Change managers are focused on adoption. I mean, that's very simplistic, but to in your mind, start there. That as a project manager, when we're getting into this and building this relationship, I'm focused on delivery. My change manager is going to be focused on adoption. So some of the things that you're going to do as a project manager, we're going to kind of do a compare and contrast here. So we're going to tag team each other a little bit. Identifying stakeholders, that does not change. We're still going to be looking to understand, is our governance correct? Do we have the right people in the decision-making roles? That's still squarely on the PM, and we're still going to be very heavily engaged and invested in that.
And I'm identifying the impacts of the change on the stakeholders, and through that process may also identify new stakeholders.
So as a project manager, all about the milestones and the budget and the scope and all of that, we're going to be managing this project, utilizing the human beings, the resources for delivery.
And as change manager, I'm driving awareness, desire, that whole ad card, but awareness and desire to participate in the change. And by the way, desire in the ad card journey is a personal decision. It's really the only area that's a personal decision. People have to choose to be a part of the change. And if they don't, you'll never have full adoption. So we have to get people to want to be a part of it.
So as a project manager, I'm always going to be keeping my fingers on the pulse and tracking issues and identifying issues, making sure that as we're going forward that we're going to be able to execute. and that we're going to execute successfully.
Right, and I'm monitoring, or we're really gathering stakeholder sentiment, their resistance, all their feedback, and trying to do it in a way that is neutral, so that they can, I mean, think about how many times you talk to people, do they really give you their honest opinion, right? It takes time.
Okay, that's another one of those little hidden gems. You have Switzerland over here. Because you have, people on your project, as the project manager, sometimes you're having to be the heavy, right, to keep things moving. Sometimes you've got people who will feel more comfortable expressing concerns to Switzerland than they are to the PM.
Right.
So they can hoover those up for you and bring them back. Now, that takes us to our next point. Our job is to not only listen to what's being said, but to act on it, to incorporate the appropriate activities and actions and whatever it is that's being surfaced here, incorporate that back into the project, because the number one way to kill trust is to have somebody tell you they have a concern, for you to say, yes, that's nice, now let's move on. Right, that if you want to build the trust, you've got to listen and then act on it appropriately.
Right. Yeah, there's nothing, I mean, I'm just ditto what Barb just said there.
So incorporating those stakeholders, their contributions back into the project's execution, we're definitely going to do that.
Right. And that honest engagement, and sometimes that means, I have to be careful about who I invite outside of the stakeholder group to that meeting. Some people, they just won't talk in front of, I mean, I don't want an executive there if I'm trying to really get some real feedback. So being careful, right? Yeah.
So as a project manager, it's still up to me to understand how I'm going to communicate project status and risk and how I'm going to do that kind of engagement. The report outs, that's still all squarely within my wheelhouse.
Yeah, and then developing targeted communication. I mean, a lot of my background before I got into solely change management was marketing. And we used to have this thing that we don't spray and pray, right? We don't throw it out to the world and then hope that people get the right message. So it really is about targeting that communication, so you're speaking directly to your audiences.
And as the PM, I'm going to make sure that we stay on target to deliver what we committed to. So managing that scope, making sure that we are staying aligned with our strategic objectives, that's still something that I've got to stay on top of.
Right, and measuring change adoption, I think I've kind of made my point there, but my job is to make sure that, just like Barb, that we achieve the outcomes that we're looking for. And that often requires us to think long after go live. I don't know what it's like in your organization, but I was at a major electric utility, and when we went live, it was like I moved on to another project and another project and another project. I'm like, wait a minute, who's monitoring to make sure that we're actually achieving this in 6 months? They're like, oh, we don't do that, and I'm like, okay. So I try to reinforce that as much as possible.
So another area where you're going to see a lot of opportunities to collaborate and for your partnership to give you a lot of extra benefits is in risk management and mitigation. And the little right here, this is the best way to think about this is one mitigates disruption to the plan, the other mitigates disruption to the people. So as a project manager, when we're talking risk management, a lot of times it's risk to scope, risk to schedule, risk to quality. Those are the things that we focus in on, where your change manager is going to be looking to how is this going to disrupt the people, and again, going back to that adoption, be barriers to adoption, and how do you get past that? So this is another one of those hidden gems where they can bring, you can have a discovery of a lot of risks that in the past may have just been completely under the radar for you as a PM because you didn't have the time or the ability. I'll be honest, I don't have that skill set to really get down like Ann does, to get into understanding, uncovering, and articulating what are the risks to adoption, so that once you've got them articulated, I can then jump in and help put together plans. I was just always struggled with understanding and articulating those soft skill type things where the people impacts are concerned. So we're, Delivery risk, that's the wheelhouse of the project manager, so we're still going to be looking for those risks for delivery. Those things that are going to keep us from being able to execute on time and on budget to deliver what we promised to deliver.
Yeah, and anticipating resistance, morale issues, especially if you're in an organization that's change saturated, all those that are barrier to adoptions. It makes me think about, I was on a project, we were implementing something called the talent marketplace. And I won't get into the specifics, but what I identified, really one of the biggest barriers to adoption really didn't have anything to do with the talent marketplace. It had to do with, in order for it to be successful, people leaders needed to have a growth mindset for their employees. That's way beyond the scope of what our project was. But that was one of the things I had to bring up. I said, we have got to do the proper amount of training and attention to shifting the mindset of the people managers in order for this talent marketplace to be successful. So some of the kind of things that we identify and unearth in change management.
So we're going to continue to analyze and prioritize risks, making sure that we're spending our time on the most important risks to be managed and monitored. We have a limited amount of time and energy, right? So we've got to still have to do that prioritization.
Right, and then I'm pretty vocal about the change impacts and really work with Barb and the project team to align them with where it might impact the project outcomes.
Developing mitigation and management plans, so how do we reduce the opportunity for this to happen? And then if it does happen, what are we going to do to manage it? So incorporating, time and money into our plans to be able to accommodate the risk management activities.
Right, and then the strategies to reduce emotional and behavioral pushback. Do you guys ever get that in your company? Yeah, right, I know. I was just in a meeting the other day, and we were talking about quality notifications. And I had somebody who had been in sales, and then I had the global quality director. And she's like, any person in the company can enter a quality notification into the system, including sales. Oh boy. And sales was like, well, I don't think that we should be wasting our time doing that. And I'm like, but you want to condense the time that we solve these quality issues, right? And if the salesperson's on the phone with the customer and the customer says, hey, I got this issue, put it in the system. And there was so much pushback. And I said, Indu, how long does it take to put a quality notification in the system? She goes, about 5 minutes. And so I look over at Joe, and he goes, well, I think what should be done in Salesforce. And I'm like, it's not in Salesforce, it's in another system. And there was so much pushback, and so I finally looked at him and I said, yes, change is on the horizon, Joe, But it was just funny, just that little thing. Yeah. And it was so important to the project.
And that's going to be a harbinger of things to come, right? I mean, when we're talking with their leaders and you've got skeptical leaders, when it gets further down to the people who are actually going to be the fingers on the keyboard. So that's very early on, and I know it's like, okay, note to self, we need to build in time to address this because this is an area where we're, of risk to the project.
Right.
So managing, monitoring those risks, watching for those triggers, all of that stuff, that's going to continue to happen throughout.
Right, and I'm definitely looking for people who I can harness that could influence the project. Nobody really wants to hear from me. Honestly, they probably don't even want to hear from Barb. They want to hear from their leaders, and they want to hear from people that they work with that, they trust. So harnessing those people is really, really a great technique.
So through all, bottom line for the project manager, you're really focused on ensuring that we deliver no matter what gets thrown at us so that we can adapt and adjust as needed.
Right, and keeping that going, right? You just never know. I remember when I was at this utility, we were interviewing stakeholders for 6 months, and it was in the 6th month we're talking to this one group, and they're like, oh man, you should talk to this group over here because they're the ones. And we, at that time, 6 months down the road, realized that was one of the key stakeholder groups. But with an organization with 15,000 people, it was hard to find that. So it's like Inspector Clouseau.
This is the last area we're going to dive into, and it's probably one of my favorite. because adoption of benefits delivery, when you as a project manager get down to the end and you're looking at your success factors and you're doing your closure on your project and you're measuring whether or not it was successful, quite often adoption gets left out of that whole thinking process when you're putting a charter together. So it's not included. So I'm hoping that this will spur folks to think a little bit broader and a little bit deeper, and a little bit further into how, with a change manager on here, how you can over-deliver on your adoption and your benefits. So again, this is the bottom line down here. The way to think about this is when you're that relationship, one delivers the solution and the other ensures it is embraced. So that is kind of like your bumper sticker slogan for that relationship of how we work through this is, I'm really going to be focused as the project manager on delivery. We're going to go live. We're going to go live on time, on budget, all of those good things. And my change manager is going to ensure that once we've delivered, we've done everything that we possibly can up to that delivery to then make sure it's embraced. And follow it through, as she was just talking about, following it through to make sure that that embracing actually occurs, that it's not that throwing it over the wall to the business mindset anymore. Okay, so kind of the key thing here, I am going to make sure that we deliver the benefits by executing the project, right? We can't get any benefits if we don't get it over the finish line. So that's my job, get it over the finish line.
Yes, and obviously preparing stakeholders, and like I mentioned before, if you take away one thing, one of the most inefficient things we can do is send out an email that says, hey, you're going to be in training next week about this, right? We really want to prepare them and give them time. It's not even respectful to people to throw things at them like that. And think about that when you get that. You're like, oh gosh, another thing? Really? HR is sending me something else? And you just ignore it, right? So really preparing people, giving them that opportunity.
I'm going to layer onto that for just a second because I've used this, and I don't even know if you know about this or not, but one of the techniques that we employ on a regular basis on this important stuff is, first thing that comes out is a letter or an email communication from someone really high up, a C-suite level hopefully, that goes out to everybody on the project that says, we are kicking this off, you are going to be involved, leadership is behind making this successful. So I actually have had people who have pushed back on doing that kind of communication with the reason that we don't need to do that. I have a hard enough time just getting them to do what I need them to do through this project, blah, blah, blah. To which I responded, having this communication come out from someone at a very high level brings accountability down the ladder. So doing that engagement, that prep work, don't underestimate it. This is, I'm applauding Ann here for teaching me this. Even when I haven't had her on other stuff, I've utilized that tactic to help me energize my teams to be, to be engaged and to be ready when they get there. And they're more receptive because they know that people higher up have expectations for this to be successful. Okay, so then the next thing is we are going to, as project managers throughout a project, make sure that we're staying aligned to what we have committed to and that we're still going to manage the scope. Because as you get more people talking, there is the opportunity for people to discover new and better things that can be done. And we all agree if there's an opportunity, we definitely want to make sure we don't miss that opportunity, but it needs to go through a controlled change process to our change control, not change management, that if there is an opportunity that we want to recognize, we still put it through our method to ensure that if we're changing the scope, everybody agrees what that means to the project, additional time, additional money, whatever it is, that we all have eyes wide open agreement we're going to do it.
Yeah, and I'm just, again, looking to understand how people have to work differently, getting them to understand that, finding out what might prevent them from doing it, learning it even. Sometimes people just don't have the time. I mean, we're short-staffed, we've had layoffs, or whatever the case may be. So, and reinforce, and then when I do find someone that's really, excelling, use them as a change agent internally. It really helps.
Yep. And on that delivery, really, the bottom line is that we have to get to go within constraints, and so we have to manage to that.
Yeah, and assessing readiness, there's like ADCAR surveys and things that we use to determine how much of our population is feels that they're, let's say, at the ability stage. Okay, if people feel they're in the ability stage, then we're ready to, flip the switch.
So we get to the end of the project. As project manager, I'm going to make sure we do a controlled close, so lessons learned, close out all the contracts, all of that good stuff, and do that handover of the documentation, and then I move on to my next project, right? I close, do the retrospective, lessons learned, whatever, do that closure, and I'm off and gone to the next project.
Yeah, and I do try to sustain engagement past the go live, right? Yeah. Get some, key stakeholders together, especially ones maybe that have been more engaged, and say, how's it going? What gaps do you see, et cetera.
So the last thing here is measuring the delivery success. Every organization is going to put together their own KPIs for project management success. Generally, that's going to be things about, the time, how well did you adhere to the baseline schedule, to your budget, to the agreed upon deliverables. Very hard and easy to measure things. Sometimes we'll do a survey for satisfaction for the people who worked on the project and the people at the end of the day, but all of that is done at closure. So, if go live is D-Day, then this is maybe D-Day plus 6 or 7 or 14, and then we stop looking at the KPIs. Whereas with the change management metrics, those adoption metrics,
yeah, this is, I think it's pro-sci, but those three, if you remember anything here, speed, it's SUP, SUP. So it's measuring how quickly people are adopting the change, okay? Figure out how you can measure that. How proficient are they at it, okay? Are they doing it skilled? Do we need a little bit more training? Do we need maybe some roundtable exercises for people to practice it, even after go live? And then what percentage of the population is actually utilizing it? We had a LIMS system that, again, Indu was implementing for quality, and oh my gosh, we could not get some people off their spreadsheets. I mean, they just kept going back to the spreadsheets. I can't remember how we resolved it, but yeah, you're going to have some stragglers. So, what percentage of the population is actually utilizing the change?
All right, so let's bring it back up a bit. We dove down into some of the particulars of how you make this partnership work, and it really is a partnership. I can't say that enough. I have core competencies as a project manager. She's got core competencies as a change manager. It's all about how you make those mesh and bring them together. So again, very, very high. This is not everything we do as a project manager, right? But we still have accountability for that stewardship. We've got to be good stewards of the project. We've still got to be deeply engaged, and we're dependent on our stakeholders and what they're bringing to the table. We still have to maintain that focus on delivering what we promise to deliver, that value that we promise to deliver. And then we still have to make sure that we are using the best tools, the best techniques, the best methodology to actually deliver the project.
Yeah, and this is all, I mean, you've heard this here. I'll just focus on, we're talking about real people, right? And people are overwhelmed. And we have to remember that it's not just about work. I mean, there could be things in their personal life too that, are burdening people. So I don't even like using the word stakeholder. Like, they're my colleagues, right? They're real people. So that's what I try to bring to the table. And I'll also remember that to do stakeholder analysis, change impact assessments well, you need time. It could take 6 months, right? So try to build that in, right? Because it's only going to make your project better. And I do find a lot of times people, like I said, we've done this training, at our organization, so people are aware of change management, so like, oh, let's bring change management in. But when it comes to actually doing change management and executing, there's a lot of resistance because it takes time. This is a true discipline. So allow the team the time and the people affected the time to get to understand and to develop the right strategies and implement them. That's, again, they're real people.
Yeah, so to sum up, we've talked through it. The best advice that we can give is you have to figure out how that relationship's going to work, and it can differ from project to project. It's a time investment. Ann and I had so many one-on-one meetings at the beginning to figure out how we were going to make this work and how we were going to engage. And basically, we had to find a way forward. So that's what you need to do. If you have a change manager assigned, develop that relationship, come together as a team, and be a united front and bring each of your core competencies to bear in the right way.
I'll just say that it's been a great experience. I've worked for organizations that had a mature change management organization. Ours is not yet. So it was kind of eye-opening to be questioned about why are you doing this? And, oh, I'll bring you in when we're ready. I'm like, no, I own this, So there's, and then there's even nomenclature that you may not realize that you don't understand. So if you have to have some sessions at the beginning that says, what do you mean by this? And what do you mean by this? And when do you want to be brought in? Like, just do that. We had a lot of conversations like that. And I think, I don't know, I would say the understanding is superior. The relationship is really, really good compared to, where we began. We're all fumbling over each other. So.
Yeah, we had a real time crunch too, which didn't help. I mean,
Well,
Ann was brought in late and we were on a really tight deadline, so. It was really,
they had workshops with stakeholders for a year before they brought me in. I'm like, where's all the notes? And by the way, a change manager does not want to read notes. They want to hear. Because I hear things differently than the rest, the rest of the people in the room. I hear things differently. So, so I'm like, are you serious? You did all that without me?
So we got about 5 minutes?
Yeah.
So I have a quick question on when the project ends.
Say again?
I had a quick question on when the project ends, because you kind of throw it over the wall and you move on to the next. But your metrics are 6 months later. So do you move over to operations at that point in time, or how does that transition?
Oh, it's not that formal. I've built a relationship with like the project owner or the senior leaders, and just commit to measuring and try to get their support in doing so. And I always make sure too that the metrics that we're measuring can be measured. Like a lot of times, it might be difficult. So I'll just introduce either a ADCAR survey or like this one project is it's a new product stage gating process. And we had certain core values for that. We had some definite things that people had to adhere to in order to make that, what do you call them, the stage gating meeting successful. So I developed a survey. And boy, I got a lot of resistance from that Joe again, And I said, we need to do this at the end of every stage gate meeting to make sure that everybody in the room that was involved feels like people were prepared. People came they give them time to review the right documents beforehand. And once I finally got his attention and he read it, he's like, that's really good. So at least that's something now we can implement after every stage gate meeting, for months ongoing, going forward.
And that's key, is building them into the process. So as a project manager, I'm going to leave, but part of what I'm handing over to the business is those things that she helped me identify and put into the project. So we identified and we've put into the project and they've agreed to. There are things that are going to happen as part of the process or as part of the normal operating procedures. It's baked in. Yeah. That's kind of the key, is those adoption metrics have to be baked in, so it can't be a throw over the wall. That's why I said earlier the wall starts coming down, because you're bringing that stuff and you're putting it into the project. You're documenting that they all agreed to do this, and then they get measured on it going forward.
What else? Yes. Oh, we got a question. Why don't you've got it. Go ahead. We'll get to you.
Okay, kind of two-part question. One was, how many projects are you involved with at any one point in time? Are you involved with 3 active ones and monitoring 5 old ones, or kind of ballpark, you know?
Probably 5-ish.
In that-
somewhere. It's a
okay.
lot.
Got it.
Yeah, and a lot of them are cultural and transformational to the organization, so they move really slowly too, but they're in depth.
And what type of, where are you organization within the organization? Are you in a corporate group, like all?
Corporate.
Okay.
Yeah, corporate.
Yeah, so the way we're set up, they're a partner for us. So we've got a change management staff, we've got a project management staff, and we all report up to the same leadership, yeah, at a higher
At
level.
a corporate level, yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if this is a question or comment. Based on your roles and responsibilities on the change manager side, it seems to me like you need a behavioral psychologist.
Well, I'm not here to analyze people, but it is true that there are a lot of walls that people have that you have to somehow get to them, but relate them to the project or to the job, right? And some of them are not my responsibility as a project manager, like the one example I told you about the talent marketplace. That's HR, okay? So I can't fix that, but I certainly can make some noise and present that as a risk. So there's a balance. But yes, you're right. There's.
Would that show up in your job description?
Well, I think it's assumed.
Thank
Yes,
you.
that's right. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it. Hands off to you.